Welcome back. Good to have your company here on Inside Story. We're discussing Vladimir Putin's trip to Iran, the first by a Russian leader since 1943. Does he want to forge even closer ties? Perhaps pique his rivals? What signals he trying to send? Well, Mr. Putin's relations with Washington, D.C. have been on the slide for some time now. He clashed in Moscow only last week with Condoleezza Rice over U.S. plans to site a missile defense system on his doorstep in Eastern Europe. They argued too over Iran's nuclear program, the president opposing the need for fresh sanctions. Just 2 days earlier, on home turf again, he was at odds with French counterpart Nicolas Sarkozy. There's no evidence Iran wants nuclear bombs, Mr. Putin said, a view he repeated on Monday, meeting the German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Both leaders agreed more talks with Tehran were crucial. Get across, first of all, now to Washington, D.C. Paul Saunders awaits us there from the Nixon Center. Let's clear up this business about Putin's attitude towards the missile defense system, first of all, if we may. In Tehran, he has said that he sees a change in U.S. attitude. Any idea what he means?
Well, I think he may have in mind that the U.S. is somewhat more willing to discuss possible compromises with Moscow and possible joint arrangements for missile defense. But my understanding is that's still really at a very preliminary stage.
Well, the reason I mention that is because I'm wondering if, in fact, the quid pro quo on this might be we'll ease off on the missile defences, this is the US position, if you ease off on your ties with Iran.
It's certainly possible as an idea, and there is a clear substantive linkage between the two issues, with the United States presenting the missile defense really principally as a response to concerns about Iran. Then it would be quite logical for Russia to say that, well, if Iran is really your concern, you know, we may try to help you a little bit on Iran, but that would really have to fundamentally change the missile defense plans.
Okay, Dmitry Babich.
There is a logic there.
Okay, Dmitry Babich in Moscow listening to that. Would the US be able to exert any pressure over Vladimir Putin regarding Moscow's friendship with Tehran?
Well, the problem is that the United States deprived itself of sort of any influence on Russia on that issue, because the United States is already exerting all kinds of pressure on Russia. So there is no room for bargaining here. If the United States had been, you know, making any concessions to Russia during the last 15 years, there could be a possibility for a trade-off, but the United States has been trying to squeeze Russia out of its former Soviet republics by all means.
On the other hand,
States said
I must point this out. On the other hand, Russia has increasingly close economic ties with the West, with the European Union. It wouldn't want to damage those interests, would it?
Well, yes, but not with the United States. The trade between Russia and the United States is very small. And the European Union also is making all kinds of moves to, as they say, to decrease their dependence on Russia, or basically to cut the amounts of economic ties between the European Union and Russia. So since we see no concessions from the European Union or the United States, I don't see how they can exert pressure. All pressure they can exert is already exerted.
Okay, so
and,
perhaps
that puts us in a very bad situation.
Saeed Mohammed Morandi listening to that in Tehran. Perhaps there's room for some pressure from the United States, from the West, perhaps, as Dmitry Babich suggests, there isn't. But there is the issue of trust, isn't there? Trust between Moscow and Tehran. We've had the 19th century Tsarist wars, large tracts of land taken away from what was then Persia by Russia and then eventually the Soviet Union. We've had Moscow backing Saddam Hussein in the Iran-Iraq war. This is not a marriage between the two that's likely to last the test of time.
True, the past relationship between the two countries has been very troublesome, but that was before the Soviet Union and during the Soviet Union itself. Since then, Iran and Russia have increasingly established stronger ties with one another. And also, the reality is that Russia itself is under pressure from the West. The United States has succeeded in alienating Russia, China, and many other countries. And the Russian president, who would obviously not wish to be seen as caving in to the Americans, has said that there is no proof that the Iranian nuclear program is anything but peaceful. He has criticized the Americans for their behavior on numerous occasions. So it is very hard to believe that the Russian president would suddenly turn around and change its stance, because it would look very bad for him and for Russia. Russia's stature in the Middle East has grown a great deal due to Russia's resistance towards the United States and the Bush regime over the last few years. And I think they would think twice before losing all these gains.
Paul Saunders in Washington, D.C., does the Bush administration look on this friendship as just a fair weather relationship, or is it concerned about Iran and Moscow being so close?
Well, I think it's clear that the administration is concerned about the relationship between Iran and Russia and about what could happen in the future in that relationship. The problem is, of course, what to do about it. And I think the particular approach that this administration has taken, to my mind, has actually contributed somewhat to a situation where both Russia and Iran feel like they have more in common with each other than either feels it has in common with the United States. So in my own view, over the longer term, the best way to, as an American perspective, the best way to address concerns about that relationship would be reaching out either to Moscow or to Tehran or to both on the basis of the common interests that we have, the United States, with those two countries. And obviously there are difficult issues to deal with in each relationship. But over the long term, I think that's the way to go.
Dmitry Babich in Moscow. Today, Vladimir Putin said, no, there is no good news about the nuclear reactor. We're not going to announce that it's going to be working on a particular date. And that was very much against what the Iranians had hoped he might say. Is anybody reading anything into this?
Well, it's clear that Russia is concerned about Iran's nuclear program, because otherwise Putin wouldn't have suggested to Bush to establish a common radar system on the Iranian border in Azerbaijan. So Russia is concerned, and Russia doesn't want to be used as a tool for the future Iranian possible military nuclear program. So this whole story with the atomic station, it's not very clear to the public what's going on. But it's clear that Moscow doesn't want to be used.
Okay, Said Mohammad Marandi, final thought from you. Is Tehran glad to have Russia as a friend, or is it any friend in a corner?
No, I think that Iran would be glad to have a strong relationship with Russia. And if the U.S. administration or a future American administration would rethink its policies, Iran would obviously be willing to move towards rapprochement with the United States as well. The reality, though, is that the Russian president has been making positive statements. He has said, and Iran believes him, that Russia does not believe that Iran is doing anything illegal with regards to its nuclear program. And Iran expects that Russia will eventually fulfill its promise to finish the building of the nuclear reactor.
I'm going to have to stop you there. The arguments could go on forever. No doubt they will go on for a very long time. Thank you for joining us on Inside Story, and thank you too for those of you who watched it. From all of us here, goodbye.